So hello, we are Big Game. We're an industrial design studio. So we founded the studio together with two friends in 2004, and our biggest achievement is that we are still friends. I think it's very important. This picture was not made on Photoshop, it's an actual picture of us. For our first exhibition in a museum, we were very scared because we didn't have a lot to show, so we tried to put all the objects in different colors so that it would look like we had done much more. So I'm here today to speak to you. We're three founders from three different countries. I'm French, there's a Belgian guy and a Swiss guy. We speak together in French. And we are based in Lausanne, in Switzerland, in the French part of Switzerland. It's a very nice place where nature is fantastic. We don't have the ocean, but we have a lake, which is great, and we have the wonderful mountains. And it's also very convenient for a design studio, especially when you do industrial design, because you're in the middle of Europe, so you're very well connected. So what we like about our job is that you get to work for a very different context. So it's, for instance, the scale of the clients that you work for can be very different. Typically, on the left, you see a project that we have done with a small craftsman in southern Japan. And so it's just basically a very small facility, a small workshop with less than 10 people working, making clay objects. It's a potter. And on the right, you can see the absolute opposite, which is Nespresso, which is a part of Nestlé. It's a huge multinational company. And we have designed cups in porcelain for them. And obviously, the two contexts are very different because you have the constraints are different, their customers are different, the price points are different. But what we like as designers is that we are able to work in those two types of context. In the same way, also doing furniture, for instance, for children or for design collectors is also, both are really interesting. On the left, you can see a chair that we did for an Italian company called Magis, and it's a children's chair where you can change the height. So it has 3 different heights, so it can grow. It's for children from 2 to 6 years old. And on the right is the first chair we ever designed. It's for a French company called Moustache. And it's based on an intuition. We just wanted to make a chair where the structure itself would grow and would become comfortable. So it's a metal structure and there's a foam outside, and it's covered by a sort of sock. And this was based purely on an intuition. And the funny thing is that it's become a sort of recognized design because it was recently added to the permanent collection of MoMA. So for us, it was a good lesson that you can do something which is a little bit absurd, but in the end, it becomes a sort of thing that is accepted as good design somehow. And also, for us, it's very important that what we design is relevant, because we think design is basically you're giving a service to somebody who doesn't necessarily need to be aware that the designer is here and that he's being present, but more that you make people's lives better. On the left is a wine bottle for the biggest producer of wine in Switzerland. It's not very well known that we make wine in Switzerland because, mostly because most of the Swiss wine is drank in Switzerland. And this was our first product that was sold in a supermarket. So for us it was interesting that people would buy the bottle not necessarily because they think the design is great, but because they want to drink the wine that's inside. And on the right is a product we designed for Logitech, which is a huge multinational company making electronic devices. And so typically, this is also one thing. It's just a peripheral for an iPad. So it's basically making your life easier when you're using your iPad because you have a keyboard that you can type on. And this is the type of thing that we like. Again, on the same topic, This is, on the left is some cutlery for an Italian brand called Alessi that you probably know, that makes beautiful tableware. It's things that are, we make every different size of spoon from for coffee, for espresso, it's a different size, for dessert, for entree. And on the right is for Swiss International Airlines. On medium-haul flights you get food, and it's usually served in a cardboard box, and that's a problem because it creates a lot of waste, so they ask us to come with a solution to make something that could be reused and washed. So this was our solution. It's being introduced on flight. It's been introduced on flight in July, and it's a plastic box that can be washed and reused for further flights. What we love about design in general, these are a few examples of designs that we think are really interesting. Typically, for instance, this watch is a Swiss watch, it's the Swatch. And it was created when Swiss industry was in crisis because quartz arrived, and that Japanese companies were essentially destroying the market of beautiful mechanical Swiss-made watches. And this was, we think, a really interesting answer because it's a simple, affordable, good quality product that's very democratic, and it's also very functional, and it managed to save the watchmaking industry in Switzerland. I mean, some objects are pretty obvious, you know them, the Swiss Army knife, which is, everybody knows about it, everybody knows how to use it, and it's extremely convenient, and it's very durable also in terms of design. The Swiss railway clock that is very easy to read and makes your life easier when you're taking the train, and you always know, when your train is leaving. Up to typefaces, Univers, this typeface with the U. It was not about making a very fancy typeface that you would notice, it was about making a system that could allow you to convey any message using one typeface, and being sort of this very neutral solution that could help you to achieve anything as a graphic designers. So, that being said, what about wood? So I made a small selection of the projects we did with wood throughout our design studio's practice, and here's the first one. So when we first started working, we just graduated from school, and we wanted to show our work somewhere, and it was in 2004, and being European, the biggest trade show for designers is the Milan Furniture Fair in April, and we wanted to show something there. So at the time, it was a little bit conceptual for us. We thought it would be really nice to make a hunting trophy that instead of inheriting from your grandfather that was a hunter or something, you could just buy it flat pack like an IKEA piece of furniture. Just buy your heritage, basically like IKEA. So with a flat packed cardboard. And we didn't have a name for our studio, and our three names together were too long and it was impossible to remember. So we thought it was a really good idea to call ourselves Big Game, because big game is big animals that you hunt, and also in French it's a little play on words. It means le grand jeu, it means we really want to be big somehow. And because it worked, now we have to call ourselves Big Game Design Studio forever. So these were made out of plywood, and one of the things that was a good experience about this product is that it's still in production today from this French producer, and it's consistently selling since more than 10 years, and we're pretty proud about this. So wood. One of the nice things about wood in general is that it's pretty versatile as far as product design is concerned, because you can use it for small-scale production. This is a product we recently designed for a very, very tiny manufacturer in Barcelona, and he's very strict about the way he works. Everything has to be locally sourced, manufactured. I think he has like a rule, it has to be less than 50 kilometers from his workshop. And his problem was that he had to come up with something that could be flat packed and shipped very easily because he wanted to sell things through the internet. So we came up with this idea of a very simple stool in 4 parts that you can buy flat packed, and he can ship it very easily, and you can assemble it with a minimum of screws. It's called Bravo, and it's pretty sturdy. It's made out of ash. This story of things being sent by mail is also one thing which is pretty interesting for us as product designers. This is a product for a very small French company called Designer Box that has an interesting concept. It works with a subscription system. So it means that you get a subscription, and every month you receive a surprise box with an object inside. You don't know what it is, you don't know in advance what designer is going to work for it. And so he asked us to do one for 1 month. And the challenge is that it's not very expensive, so you have to come up with an idea for a product that could be something that it's very cheap to produce, but also conveys a nice effect. And so we just designed this very simple woodcut, and it looks like 3 birds basically, and there's just a space in the middle so you can pick it up with your finger, and there are just simple holes that glow in the dark when you turn off the light. One thing which is also interesting as a designer is that when wood in itself can be combined with other materials, obviously, to come up with something different. So this, for Alessi, in Italy, this box was basically born from a demand that Alberto Alessi asked us. He told us, I want you to design, I can't do the voice, he has a voice like this, I want you to design anonymous Swiss object, which is a very weird brief, what is an anonymous Swiss object? And then we made some research and found that it was very common in the 50s in Switzerland to have sort of metal toolboxes that people would use to put anything in it. You could put shoe polish or sewing material or desk or whatever stuff. People would carry things in toolboxes, and so we thought, okay, let's make an object that's like a small toolbox that you can have in your home, which is very convenient. And we make it out of plastic, and to give a warmer touch, we just have this handle in wood. And so that's the result. Again, one of the things that was interesting in this project was also to develop the connection mechanism between the plastic box and the wooden handle, because the tolerances are very different between these 2 materials, and you have to find a system so it really clicks together. So plastic is not the only material that you can mix with wood. This is for Hay, a company in Denmark, which is quite young. It's approximately 10 years old, and it's very dynamic. They're working a lot to create new products all the time. And they asked us once to design something for the entrance. Something that's very convenient that you need to have in your home, and that brings a service. So we thought, okay, let's make a coat hanger and have a beam in metal, and then we have just one hook in wood that you can slide in. So it's a very simple system, and if you want, you can buy more hooks if you have more clothes than you think you originally needed. And also because the shape of the beam, you can put letters or things that you always forget. You can stack them on top. but you can also use wood in other contexts that are not necessarily furniture-based or things like that. For instance, we're currently working, so remember I showed you this small box to serve food on board for a Swiss international airline. This is another context where some airlines have to, it's mandatory in the regulation that they have to destroy all the waste that comes from passengers eating on board. And as an alternative, we are currently working on a system that is basically a paper pulp tray, you know, like egg cartons. And basically you have everything there could be recycled, just like paper. And that's it's a quite interesting alternative because it has never been done before in that scale, where the whole thing can be recycled. Or also, you know, wood in a very large definition. This is a project we did in Portugal a while ago for a company called Amorim, which is the biggest producer of cork in the world. So they have their own trees. The cork is harvested. It's the bark of the tree which is harvested. And then you have this gentleman on the right. It looks easy, but it's not. And so the biggest product, the biggest product they produce is basically the cork stoppers on the wine bottles. The thing is, when they're done doing this, you can see on the bottom left that there's 70% of that cork which is left, and they don't know what to do with it. So they grind it and they create the material that's on the bottom right, which is these big blocks. And they asked designers to make products that they could sell maybe in museum shops or in places, make something that is more sort of, creates a warmer link to this material. So we had the idea, because cork floats, we decided to create some small toys. So it's a molded cork boat. And you have 3 different models. There's a sailboat and a cruise liner and a racing boat. This seemed pretty easy, but when we first designed them, we showed them in Milan, and it was quite successful. The only problem is that they didn't float like this. They floated like this. So it seemed very easy, but it took some time to actually get the weight right so that it would float in the right direction. Obviously, we've seen it all over today. Wood in interiors is definitely super interesting. This is a project we did a while ago with an architect who basically asked us about making the equipment inside the apartments. He wanted to, so he had to create like stairs and a kitchen and all these type of things. And we thought, let's bring all those services like one big wooden box. So basically, you see the stairs on one side, and underneath this becomes a sort of storage unit, and it becomes the complete kitchen. And so in a way, it's like helping you, because you can store your objects, you can easily use it to make your life easier, and at the same time, it's the mandatory equipment that you need to have, which is stairs, typically. Wood to open doors. It's a project we did with the Polytechnic School in Lausanne, and they had developed a technology by applying pressure to softwood like pine. So pressure and steam, and basically you can turn softwood into a much harder material, because the heat combined with the pressure, you can get the wood fibers to recombine in a certain way so that it becomes very, very durable. So using that principle, you can see the mold on the top left, and using that principle, we designed door handles that are unbelievably hard, and so we decided to work on the thinness of the material to really showcase how hard this material is. And this is the final project I'm going to show you. It's a little bit more longer than the others. It's so with the studio we have a lot of clients in Japan. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we get along well with Japanese people. Maybe karaoke. I don't know. There's a reason somehow. But so this is an ongoing collaboration we have with Karimoku, and they are the biggest manufacturer of wooden furniture in Japan. This is one of their factories. It's pretty huge. And the thing is that they make furniture out of wood for a long time, but they're importing a lot of wood. And the thing is that the wood that they produce in Japan is not exploited to the best, not optimized really. One of the problems is that with the forestry, they have to clear some of the smaller trees to make place for other trees to become bigger, and this wood is very hard to use because the sections are really small, and so sometimes they turn it into paper pulp, and sometimes they don't even use it, they just discard it. And that was the original brief. They asked us to design basically some furniture using that material. So we had to visit their factory quite a few times, and that's it's pretty incredible because being in Japan is so you can see that they're really good craftsmen. They can perform some tasks like this lady is sanding down a piece of wood extremely fast, but then if you touch it, the curve is super nicely achieved. But they also have robots that do it even better, and it's almost, you almost feel like you're in the automotive industry because it's the precision of everything that is done within this context is pretty amazing. Especially, they don't necessarily work only with geometrical shapes. They can give very organic shapes to wooden pieces, and it's pretty impressive. And so they ask us to design furniture that could be used every day, that could be used also in contract. So it means that restaurants or cafes or hotels could use them. It could be sold in big quantities. So we investigated basically cafes quite near to our studio, and we thought, how come people spend such long time in cafes, playing cards, or okay, maybe it's because of the beer, but maybe it's also because the chairs are really comfortable. So we started making a survey of cafe chairs and started measuring the proportions, measuring the heights, the radiuses, the angles, and we tried to reproduce this ergonomy as close as possible with different models to get something that could be very simple but could also be really comfortable. Another constraint also is that being in Japan, things have to be very compact and have to also stack, because when you ship things abroad, when you export, you need things to either flat pack or be stackable. And so that's a cool moment. That's when we send a 3D file, and then in return we receive videos like this, which for us is like a dream come true. It's like, things being tested and becoming reality. And so this was our first chair for them. So reproducing this ergonomy, trying to get the proportions that are the same, and of course being stackable, really important. So every time, so it's a collaboration that's been ongoing since 2009. And every time we design a new piece of furniture with them, we try to push it further and really get the detailing push them. Like for instance, on the top left, this is an armrest, and so it's a mix of selecting the pieces of wood and getting a 3D CNC to really mill it as precisely as possible, and getting something very well shaped. And there you can see a few examples of the furniture family. The tables, for instance, are designed to be flat packed, and the small table, which is a square, is the half of the rectangular table. So it means that if you have a restaurant, you can combine them in different configurations. In another sense, you also have stools that you can stack, and you have also sofas that you can easily combine. The thing they always tell us when we go there is that a piece of furniture should at least as long as the tree it was made from. And that's like, they always tell this to us every time we go there. And I mean, on one hand, this gives you a lot of pressure as a designer, but on the other hand, I think it's a pretty valuable constraint, because at some point you really have to respect the raw material if you're gonna work with something like wood. So that's it. Thank you.